between 4 and 5, however this turns out to be. Or if we were doing this with height, we might say on average, males are, I think it's like 5'9", 5'10", I don't know the average height of a man. The average woman, I think, is like 5'7", something like that. It's not extra credit if you correct that because you can look it up. We would say, okay, but we also say the average height is, or the norm for heights is between this and this. Now, other people might want to expand it out and say the first 2 standard deviations. That's fine. But in general, I'm going to try to go, well, what do the majority of the people do? Any questions about this? Whew. This is tough. Who hasn't had statistics yet? Really?
Well, I had it and I dropped it because
I'm in it right now.
Any right now?
Well, the language barrier I was having a problem.
We're going to edit that out. What we often see is that the norm of the culture, the typical, the expected of the culture influences people's behavior because in 2 ways. One is by definition, the norm is the norm. It's like that's by definition what it is. And if I want to predict your behavior, but that's not how I'm going to also be able to predict your behavior. When you're deciding how many classes is reasonable to take a semester, guess what you're going to do? See what most people take. You're going to go, how many classes is reasonable to take? And I go, well, most people on average take 4 or 5. You go, I'm thinking of taking 7. I'm going, 7 might be a little much. And so, if you imagine, here's you again. Remember, you're a circle, because it's not even a good circle. You are going to go, okay, well, let's see, what's the norm? And and most people use that as a gauge of predicting their own behavior. So let's say we were to make our curve different. So our curve might be, how long do people date before they get engaged? I don't know the answer to this question. I mean, but there's a number, right? So we can make a bell curve. What would be a good guess? 4. First off, you dated for 10 years and y'all need to get married, so y'all not even using you. What do you think would be a good guess?
2, 3.
Okay, I tell you what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pick the modal response. Okay, I'm gonna assume it's in the. You know what? Here's what we can do. We can go A, B, C, D, E. I'm gonna go with 0 to 1. Just over 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So this is 2.1. Whatever. 3.1 to 4, 4.1 to infinity, which will include you to help you out, buddy. All right, what is the average? What's the average? I'm going to pick the modal response to represent the mean. That is technically not true, but what is the modal response, just so we get our terminology? Oh, great. Both Alex and Steve, be sure you quiz on this one. Modal means most. Modal means most. I am going to use that for right now as proxy for the mean, but it is not technically the mean, and I don't want to get chastised for it. All right, so I'm like, how long? Well, let's see, y'all are somewhere, what is that, C, 2 to 3. I would not have thought that. Really, 2 to 3 years? All right. So we're going to say, all right, the average person dates 2 to 2.5 years. Are y'all saying this before marriage or before engagement?
Before making that decision to leave
Okay.
and marry.
All right, okay, so, all right. That seems kind of long to me. But whatever. I'm like, that's a relationship in itself. All right, so now you've been dating your beloved for 6 months, and you're like, oh, I love them so much. Oh my God, they're the greatest thing ever. You're like, I think I want to marry them. How long should I wait? What might you do in this situation? I mean, how would you figure? So I happen to have clickers, but how might you figure this out in your private life? Yeah, here you are, little bitty you. You're apparently dying. I'm sorry to hear that. You might not want to wait 2.5 years. All right, so here you're sitting here and you're like, oh, I'm in love. I think I want to marry them. You might deliberately seek out this kind of information, right? By asking your friends, asking someone else the answer to this question, right? So you might use this as a way to try and figure out your own behavior. This is what we mean by conformity. The culture starts exerting some pressure, either because you're looking for the answer from the group, or what might also happen, even if you don't look for the answer. So you've been dating for, let's go with, it was 1,200 years. All right, so about year 5, what might happen? So
would start to feel like they should be engaged by now.
So what might her family, his friend, his friends, what might her family, his family, what might people start saying to him?
When are you going to get married?
So when are you going to get married? So what are they doing to his decision to want to go, I'm going to be way out here in the tail? They're trying to get him to
Conform.
Yeah, they're trying to get him to conform. This idea here is going to be one of the biggest ways that I'm going to be able to predict someone's behavior. So I'm going to go, okay, there are going to be societal pressures. All right, it's been 6 weeks. You're in love. You cannot imagine. You're living without them. You know, it's the east. They're the sun. Whatever. You're in love. You're like, I think I'm going to pop the question. What might someone say if you're down the tail here?
You might want to wait.
You might want to wait. So this here, whatever it happens to be, is going to exert pressure to get people to follow it. That's what we're going to mean by conformity. And by and large, most people conform. By and large, most people conform. Now, remember, there's a bell curve for many, many traits, so it doesn't, by definition, just north of 2/3 of people are within the first and standard deviations. And there's a spread, but this still exerts a pull. And by and large, when people are trying to figure out what to do, they go, what's everyone else doing? Right? So we're going to see 100 examples of this through this course. So for us, one of the first questions I'm going to ask about people is not, tell me about you. It's going to be, what culture are they from? What's the context? And then I'm going to start working and trying to narrow it down. So to give one way to see how this might work in practice, let's say that I establish again, I got my bell curve, that my population bell curve is that people wait, what would we decide, 2.5 years before asking people to marry. What if I find, and I don't know if this is true, and I have no context for it, but what if this is the overall national bell curve? What if it's the case that the southern bell curve looks something more like that, and the northern bell curve looks something more like that for this particular trait? What might I then do if I'm trying to predict your behavior? Figure out which part you're in and go, all right, the national, but now I'm sort of narrowing it down. And let's say, and I don't know if this is true, let's just say for some reason, people who don't believe in divinities, they just fall in love and marry every day. They're like, I don't believe in anything after this life. Let's get married. Or I don't know why they would say that. But maybe they do. Who knows? All right. So now, for the sake of this example, they're like, oh, okay. So I then go. That becomes various bell curves in the south. And so that social group, I've been dating 6 weeks. I'm so in love. What might they say?
That's the normal.
That becomes the norm for that particular social group. But you see what I've done? I haven't started with you. I've gone and said, well, what population? What I'm sort of getting you into population, subpopulation, and then trying to figure out. And you might do the same as well. You might say, well, the population norm is this, but in my family, the norm has been this. And so I can use that to help predict your behavior. Any questions about this perspective? Well, in the interest of time, I have no place to tell you about psychology's place in the social sciences until Monday. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you Monday. The notes will be online this weekend.